With outstretched arms, the Asquani, the tree people, embrace the sun. They dance with the excitement of this new day. Raven calls out. The trickster is awake. His wings open, reaching for the stars, the moon, the sun. He swims in the fresh daylight that has arrived. Ki'akau, I am here to witness the beauty of your creation. Share with me the wisdom. Share with me the knowledge. Share with me the love. Raven calls out. I hear the voices of my ancestors whispering. I listen. I listen as it echoes from another time, another place. I listen. Raven calls out. I look to the east. With outstretched arms, Grandmother Moon smiles bright. Her light reflecting through the trees drapes me like a blanket, warms me. I look above, and in the midnight sky, the auroras are dancing, dancing, dancing. In the light of the moon, under one sky, all is well, all is well, all is well.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Museum of Glass Hot Shop. We're doing a special presentation of our Hot Shop Live program, and with us today is Mr. Preston Singletary. The subject of today's event, give him a round of applause, please. The topic this week is Northwest Coast Native American art. Preston is down here working on some of his pieces. Presently, he is working on a piece entitled Raven. We'll be hosting some other folks as well, so we'll get to hear another couple artists chiming in about their work and their experiences. But right now, I'd like to thank everybody that's watching in our online audience. So everything that you see here on the screen, we are broadcasting live on the web, and we gratefully acknowledge the Chance Galleries for their support of this live broadcast today. I'll tell you a little bit about Preston, and then we will get on with the show. Preston has been blowing glass for about 30 years or so. He is a Seattle native. He has a studio in Seattle, Washington, and again, he's been with us all week down here at the museum, preparing his show that will be upcoming exhibit here at the museum in a while. To begin with, I'd like to show you some images of Preston's pieces up on the screen here. Again, the work of Preston Singletary, our visiting artist. The work that Preston is well known for is a way of combining traditional European glassblowing techniques with his Native American heritage, and specifically the Tlingit tribe up in southern Alaska. We've been working on some of these hat forms, and this is what we were making yesterday. And folks, what you'll see today is the live glass blowing part. What you won't see is the glass carving part. So once these pieces are cool, Preston will get them back to his studio in Seattle and carve into the surface of the glass. And these are some ladles. On Wednesday, we created some ladles down here, and those of you in our live audience can see a finished ladle on the pedestal down in the front left side of the studio. And this will, again, give you a sense of the pieces on the table that have yet to be carved, and then the finished pieces, again, which are carved in through the sandblasting technique. And the work that we're creating right now, again, Raven with the Sun, Raven stealing the sun. The title of the show that Preston is working towards is entitled Raven and the Box of Daylight. And we also have pieces of Raven stealing the moon as well. And folks, now switching to the live action on the floor here, we're at a kind of a critical part in the glass blowing process. Again, Mr. Preston Singletary seated. Ben is turning the pipe, and Gabe, the gentleman in the ball cap, has just brought a punty. Now this will be the new handle for the piece. We're getting ready to transfer the bubble from the blow pipe onto this punty rod. And we need to do that so that we can work on the beak of the Raven. To remove the work from the pipe, Preston's using water and a tap. And again, Preston Singletary, ladies and gentlemen, who just transferred the piece from one rod to another. As I mentioned earlier, Preston's ancestry through his grandmother's side is from the Tlingit tribe up in southern Alaska and northern British Columbia. And here's Preston in his own words talking about his family heritage.
I'm a member of the Tlingit tribe, and they come from Alaska region, southeast Alaska. You know, some of the things that historically, there was two ways of looking at it. You had crest art, which represented the families, kind of like a coat of arms, and then some of the more expressive work was usually made by shaman or made for them. These little amulet forms and things like this are generally maybe illustrating some kind of a vision that the shaman would have had. And those are the things I like to draw on, those kinds of ideas. Not that they represent any particular specific vision that I've had, but that whole interaction, and it alludes to the fact that there is a spiritual aspect of the culture, and that's what I try to bring into those particular pieces.
And folks, I'm not the only person working for the Museum of Glass down on the floor here. I'd like to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Miss Katie Phelps from our Curatorial department. Take it away, Katie.
To say that that's the case.
So why is the native storytelling tradition important today?
I think all of us telling our stories is important. Every single one of us is, because what makes a good story is overcoming obstacles. And every time we overcome an obstacle, we reveal a skill or a gift or a talent that helped us to get over that obstacle. And so whenever we tell our personal stories, and whenever we talk about, like in this case, I recognize and acknowledge that a public school music program helped me to overcome obstacles. Well, every time I tell that story, someone else is inspired to tell their story, and that's the important part of storytelling.
That's really inspirational. I understand that you're also president of the nonprofit HonorWorks. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your mission and what you do?
HonorWorks, our mission is to create and ignite the potential for honor among all people, and we do that by supporting a culture of honor in our lives through arts and education.
That's so great. And so I have another question. I understand outside of your day job, you're in a band with Preston. Is that true?
Yes.
Would you mind playing us a little something?
Sure. Okay. Can we bring...
Oh, fabulous. Yes, I get to also introduce Jean, who is the third member of the Little Big Band, and they are here to play a performance for us. Can we give them a round of applause, audience? There we go. Thank you very much. So Jean, we were having a really interesting conversation before we started about why fire and sand are important. Would you mind telling us your perspective?
Well, what we have here, we have this art form that has evolved. And all the elements of the fire, the sand, everything, it comes from the earth. It comes from the land. It's this organic art form that is just, as you can see now, is where it's evolved to. And so this your traditional form that just, yes, all these elements of the earth. It's nothing new to this land, to this world. It's all there. And as indigenous native people have used these resources all through just time and generations and generations. And here it is, this evolving to this here, even to another beautiful art form.
Thank you. Greg mentioned earlier that Preston is working on a Raven piece. Raven is a popular story around the Pacific Northwest. Can you tell us why that trickster character resonates here so much?
You see, that's why. Because Raven, he is the trickster. And Raven, he is that wise one, that old one, that foolish one. And Raven lives in each and every one of us. And if you've ever seen a raven, a real live raven, especially up in Alaska, southeast Alaska, there is no other ravens in the world like those. Just their presence of who they are. And and there's even a story out there that Raven, and he's gone, and the people are wondering, where is he at? Where is Raven? And I'm here to tell you to just look in the mirror, because Raven lives in each and every one of us. Because the character of Raven, those elements, are human characters. And we are here. And the Raven stories are important because they are how we teach. Just like the coyote stories, those trickster stories, the rabbit, the Anansi. That's just how we teach. And stories are so important to all tribal people because that is the organic, the traditional way of learning. And I'm saying tribal people, we're all tribal people. It doesn't matter if we're white, we're black, we're native, or Asian. We all come from a place of tribes. We all have our stories, our trickster stories, and Raven is there.
So I understand that you're a storyteller yourself. We heard your voice over our introduction today. Would you mind telling us the story of Raven and the Box of Daylight?
Oh, I could tell you that story. How much time do we have? Let me get my drum over here.
Fabulous.
Nichway on the good ways, your way underneath. Raven was walking along the beach. It was the beginning of time and the world was dark. The stars, the moon, and sun were kept in boxes by a wealthy old man. He lived at the headwaters of the Nass River. The fishermen of the night told Raven of these treasures, and so Raven went to the house of the old man. Raven went to the house of Nashak Ankawu. And it was there that Raven saw Nashak Ankawu's beautiful daughter. She was drinking water from the stream. So Raven changed his spirit into a tiny hemlock needle. And when that beautiful daughter went to drink her water, Raven floated down and fell in her cup. And when she drank the water, she not only drank the water, but she also swallowed down Raven. And soon she became pregnant and gave birth to Raven in the form of a human child. Now everybody loved this child except the mother-in-law. You see, the mother-in-law knew that this was really Raven, but nobody listened to her. But she knew that this here child had the spirit of Raven, but they thought, oh, you're just crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And still to this day, nobody listens to the mother-in-law. The stars, moon, and sun were kept in boxes by a wealthy old man in the corners of the house. So Raven, the child with the spirit of Raven, put into the box that contained the stars, and he began to cry. Oh! The old man, Nashakakao, goes, no, you can't have that. But he gave in to him. He took that box down and he placed it in front of his grandchild. And that child played on the box. And when nobody was looking, he opened that box. And out of the box flew the stars into the nighttime sky forever. Oh, Cardi, my precious objects are gone forever. Yes, Nashakakawo. Oh, that child with the spirit of Raven did the same with the box that contained the moon. He opened the box and the moon flew into the nighttime sky forever. Ah, Raven is patient though. When it came to the box that contained the sun, ah, he cried and he cried and he cried. And the old man, he goes, no, you can't have that box. But he cried so much that he got sick. And he got so sick that the people thought that he might die. And with a beautiful daughter, she picked up her child and said, Father, is there anything worth more than the life of your grandchild? Oh, you taught me a lesson. And so the old man took that box down and placed it in front of his grandchild. But this time he asked the people, watch my grandchild, make sure he doesn't open the box. But soon, Raven is patient. Soon the people got tired, or some of them got hungry. And when nobody was looking, that child with the spirit of Raven, he opened that box, and out of the box flew the sun into the nighttime sky forever. Oh, Kadi, my precious objects are gone forever. Nashakakawu comes up to the people and says, why didn't you watch my children? And everyone goes, I don't know. But Raven, he changed his spirit back into a bird, and he took the last box, the one that is called the box of daylight, and he flew out the smoke hole with it. Raven was walking along the beach, and he came up to the fishermen of the night, and they had a fire, and Raven said, feed me. And the fishermen of the night said, no, you go away. I freed the stars, the moon, the sun, are the most precious gift of all the world and here for everyone. You treat me this way, now feed me. And still those fishermen of the night, they said no. So Raven, he took that box of daylight and he opened it, and daylight flashed throughout the world. The fishermen of the night, they ran away and hid. Some hid in the sky, some hid in the forest, some hid in the waters. The ones who hid in the sky became all the birds of the world. The ones who hid in the forest became all the animals of the world. The ones who hid in the waters became all the fish of the world. And then there are the ones who stood up straight and tall, and they became the human beings. And they saw the world clearly for the first time, and they marveled at the beauty of it. And this is how Raven brought daylight to the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gene Tagaman. Thank you so much, sir.
Gonna choose. When I say gonna choose, that's our language in Slinket, and how we say thank you. But if you come up to me or Swilcane or Preston later on and say, oh, that was good as cheese or cottage cheese, we'll forgive you. It's okay.
Thank you very much.
Katie, it is great. And again, thank you, Katie Phelps, Gene Tagaban, and Swilcanum, and we'll hear from both those gentlemen a little bit later in our program. Again, my name is Greg Owen. I'm the MC down here at the Museum of Glass Hot Shop, and a lot of stuff has been happening on the work that Preston is doing right now. To bring you all up to speed of how we got to this point, and I'll talk about what we're doing in depth in a moment, but let me give you a quick recap, please, of the work that we've done so far. So this is one of our instant replays. We started with a bubble of clear glass. Ben gathered up more clear glass, and then we stuffed that clear glass in a cup of colored glass. Ben shaped that up with some wet newspaper, and then the team sifted powdered black glass over the surface of the piece. Preston began blowing up the form, shaping it on the steel table. We stretched out the neckline, and using gravity, got a little bit longer. Attached a new rod to the bottom and broke the piece off the blowpipe. And that's right where we are right now. We've been spending time cutting in the beak of the Raven. As you can see Preston cutting with his shears. He'll spend a little bit of time then smoothing all that in. Once the beak is smooth and even, Ben then brought the sun, which was created earlier. It was on hold at about 1,000 degrees, and Preston then attached it to the inside of the Raven's beak. Sarah carried it to the annealing oven, and it's sitting there right now at 920 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's look at the action on the floor. And again, Preston Singletary, our visiting artist here, shaping up the beak of the Raven. Preston is working with a hot torch. That torch is burning at about 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning propane and oxygen. And that torch is about twice as hot as our glory hole. Danny's working the doors to the glory hole right now. It burns at about 23 to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, fired with natural gas and compressed air. You can see Gabe taking the work in there, and he's giving it what we call a flash. So he's keeping the glass hot. If we let this glass get any colder than 900 degrees Fahrenheit, it will shatter. So we'll continually go back into the glory hole and re-flash the work. He'll bring it back out, and then Preston will again get back to work using these metal tools. Preston is working with some metal tools right now called the taglia. And these tags, as we call them for short, are like trowels. They're made out of steel. And as you can see, Preston can use them to shape the inside of the beak and then press the form back down on the surface as well. When he wants to get spot heat on the work, he'll use this propane torch. And as well, Ben is working with another propane torch back here on the punty. This steel rod pulls the heat out of the glass. The punty is the first place it wants to crack. If it gets colder than 900 degrees Fahrenheit, it will shatter. So we'll flash the punty, Gabe will take it back into the glory hole and make sure everything stays nice and warm. And again, folks, what we'll be doing today is the hot working. What you're not going to see is the cold working. So let's look at some finished pieces down here as an example. Preston was with us on Monday night. And on Monday, as we were hosting museum executives and employees from around the country, Preston made these incredible mask forms with the dorsal fin of a killer whale attached to the top. The way Preston made this form was by blowing it into a 2-part bronze mold. So Preston had these molds fabricated to his design. We got a bubble of glass, we blew it in the mold, closed the mold, and blew it out to form. That gives us the basic shapes. On Wednesday, we were working on creating these ladle forms. And again, what you won't see is this ladle form getting transformed into a finished ladle. And that's what we have on the pedestal over here. So obviously, a lot of work has been done to go from this form to this form. Preston carved out the center of the piece, and then applied a resist and carved the form line imagery into the glass. Then we had to spend some time having a metal stand fabricated, and each one is custom made for the piece. And again, folks, what we have over here is a similar setup. We have powdered colored glass on the surface. We went into that color cup, so that's the color on the inside of the vessel. So again, what we spend maybe an hour and a half doing the hot working, we'll spend perhaps another few hours doing the cold working and carving. And so that I can tell you a little bit more about that, or rather you can hear Preston in his own words, I draw your attention to the screen once again to see again carving the glass when it's cold. Preston Singletary, ladies and gentlemen.
And this is the same process that I use in all of my work, or covering it with the rubber tape, drawing out the design and cutting out the areas that I want to be carved, and then with the sandblasting process, just set about wearing the surface of the glass down and carving it. That's why I refer to it as sand carving, you know, because then it also kind of relates to the tradition of wood carving. These elements, the way that they're constructed, are really what make the art what it is. That's what makes it recognizable as Northwest Coast art. And of course, you know, you've got this blowhole here, but it's built into the dorsal fin, and so that's just one of the ways that you can play with these elements. And you're showing a three-dimensional thing. You're representing it in a two-dimensional space, and so therefore you're looking at different elements of the animal. And it could be said that you're looking at the underside, you're looking at the side, you're looking at, but it's all arranged into a flat example.
And folks, you can see Preston working again with more metal tools. These are called the diamond shears. We have all sorts of different shears or scissors that we work with. And by stretching the glass, again, it helps to make it more symmetrical. And we do want the beak of the raven coming out to a fairly fine and defined point. So Preston will continue to stretch and pull out, and then we'll melt that area back in. In a moment, I'll be handing the helm back to my esteemed colleague, Miss Katie Phelps. And Katie will be conducting another interview with another local artist, a little bit different take on the Northwest Coast formline style, but no less exciting and very, very timely. And so again, my esteemed colleague, Miss Katie Phelps. Take it away, Katie.
Why, thanks, Greg. So now I'm here with Jeffrey Verige, who's a member of the Port Gamble Sklallam tribe and was raised on a reservation locally known as Little Boston, which is near Kingston, Washington. He is an honor graduate of the Art Institute of Seattle and has studied the basics of Salish line form. And his work will be featured across the street at the Washington State History Museum this summer in the Spirit, which is opening in August. So Jeffrey, tell us a little about yourself.
First off, I just want to say thank you for having me here. Being with Preston is fantastic. So, well, I grew up in Little Boston, which is about 5 minutes outside of Kingston, Washington. I've loved comic books, science fiction, Star Wars, Star Trek since I was a small boy. My mom has it in my baby book showing my little drawings when I was 3 or 4. So it's just, I'm just basically a big kid. I never grew up.
So, as everybody can see up on the screen, Jeffrey creates these fabulous drawings that are a mix of Salish formline drawing and comic books and superheroes. So tell us a little bit more about formline drawing and what it is.
It's coastal art. It's a two-dimensional art. It's, you know, okay, so this is real, okay. It's a way of graphic design way of showing three-dimensional art. You got various shapes, various symbols go into it. You got the ovoid, which is the foundation of it, which has been expressed, which some people say looks like a either stretched or squished rectangle. You have the splits, you have the U's, you have crescents. Sean Peterson likes to say that it's like a stone pebble. You drop in the stone and everything looks like it floats away. What I do with it is I've taken it a little bit further. I'm far from the pure form of it. I take elements of that into my own design and own artwork. So I am not, my artwork like myself is a hybrid.
So why do you choose to combine contemporary pop culture with traditional Native American formline drawing?
Honestly, just for the hell of it. I wanted to have fun. I'm just a big kid. I work at a marketing agency, specializes in nonprofits, and it's a great job, but I wanted to do something more fun for me, get back to that kid. When you're a little kid, you just draw for the fun of it. Whatever you imagine, whatever you want. And I hadn't been doing that, and I wanted to do something that was pure, why I went to art school to begin with.
So on your website, it says that you are an artist, a graphic designer, and a mischief maker. Raven is our trickster character for today, so why do you identify with Raven and tricksters?
I'm a pain in the ass, just like Raven. Sometimes, and my motives are always personal. I always want to make people laugh. I want to make myself laugh and laugh at the expense of others. When I play little jokes on them, they're harmless jokes. They really are. I don't do anything too malicious. It's just I like playing pranks and just staying true to who I am.
That's so great. How do you see yourself connecting to the work that Preston's doing on the hot shop floor today?
I think we both push the envelope. I think that we're taking the spirit or the essence of what our ancestors created. I think that it's just a natural evolution that we look for different mediums and different ways to tell the stories that we know and are familiar with.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Where can people see more of your work and find out more about you?
www.jeffreyverige.com. Comic stores, real soon. I have a bunch of comic titles that I'm working with. My first one is Judge Dredd. It will be out next month. I believe, and I'm working on 3 other titles at the moment. Finger Dukes, and EMP, I'm going to be working on a product line for them that'll be genre specific.
That's so great. Everybody, Jeffrey Vergy is our fabulous contemporary artist today. Can we give him a round of applause? All right, thanks, Jeffrey. What's going on the hot shop floor, Greg?
Well, thank you very much, Katie, and thank you, Jeffrey, as well. It's really awesome work. We are getting very near the end of this piece, folks. We've been at it for about an hour, and we're on a really good clip with it. Again, our visiting artist, the gentleman that has brought us all together today, Mr. Preston Singletary. Preston is working on pieces which will eventually be on display here at the Museum of Glass. His upcoming exhibition, Raven and the Box of Daylight. So we're creating a raven right now, Raven stealing the sun. And again, we've been working on this piece for a little over an hour. We're getting near the end, and let me just bring you up to speed and tell you what's going to happen next. As I mentioned earlier, Preston has been shaping this piece up. He's been working on the beak of the raven right now. He's just putting the finishing touches on that shaping. Once he does get it complete, we're going to pick up the sun, which is heating up in this silver box right behind me. We've got the sun at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll pick it up on a metal tray, transport it to Preston. He'll heat up the bottom of the piece, and then we'll attach the sun to it. As I mentioned earlier, I do want to reiterate that we graciously acknowledge the Chance Galleries for their financial support of this live feed today. People have watched us in our live feed in 93 countries around the globe. So whenever we're down here blowing, you can watch us for free on our website or directly off our Ustream TV channel. Anytime that we're working, you don't have to be here. Again, it's a free service. You can write us in questions. We'll be able to answer you live in real time. So we're just flashing the work. If you missed it when we were talking about the equipment, this round thing that Gabe is reheating the glass in is called a glory hole. It burns at about 23 to 2400 degrees Fahrenheit, fired with natural gas and compressed air. The torch that Preston is using right now is burning at about 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, fired with oxygen and propane. And that torch is so hot that it could actually boil the glass and permanently discolor it. Preston again is working and just finding up the tip of the beak of the raven. And Ben is using this propane torch to keep the punty warm, that connection to the metal rod. And of course, normally we're taking questions from our audience, and folks, I ask your patience, and I appreciate it so far. If you do have questions, if you would, please just wait till this piece is done, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions and get some answers. Over here at the garage, Ben has just moved, and it looks like we've got a moon here, onto this metal tray. And so the shot you're seeing, folks, is inside the garage. Again, this box is running at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We've made some suns and moons earlier. They're being stored in here at the moment. Ben has just picked up one of these pieces on this tray, and we're about ready again to attach it to the inside of the beak of the raven. Once Ben comes out of here, it'll be fairly quick to get that piece attached inside the beak. As I mentioned earlier, Preston's been at this for a while. He makes it look very easy, but he has been blowing glass for over 30 years, and so this is a full-time job for him. All of our employees down here on the floor have been blowing glass since we were teenagers. And again, this is a profession. It's not a hobby. It's not a pastime. We take it very seriously. All right, timing is everything. Ben has just heated up the piece. He'll bring it on over to Preston. Preston's grabbing it with his tweezers. Sarah's handed him this hot torch, 4,500 degrees. He'll liquefy the bottom of the planet. Ben is keeping the tray under there just for security's sake. And again, now applying the piece. When the glass is hot, it's very sticky. It loves to stick to itself. The smallest points are the ones that want to cool down quickly. Again, if any of this glass gets colder than 900 degrees Fahrenheit, it wants to shatter. You'll see Preston using the torch just to make sure everything stays nice and warm. Spend a little bit of time shaping this back up, but we want to think about putting it away very soon. The work we made with Preston yesterday is in the oven over on the right side of the studio over here. We loaded in at 920 degrees Fahrenheit. We turned a computer cycle on last night about 5 o'clock, and now it's come down to about 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So soon this will be cool enough that we can open it up and see yesterday's work. Sarah is going to grab the Raven right now and put it into the oven over on the left side of the studio. She's got on Kevlar gloves. Folks, this piece will be very hot when she goes to grab it. It's going to be over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what we could say is the most important part of the process. The piece doesn't do us any good on the rod. We've got to get it off the rod safely and in one piece and get it into the annealing oven to cool the glass down slowly. Preston is calling out the timing of the piece, working in tandem with Gabe, the gentleman holding the punty rod. Folks, to remove this work, Preston is going to use a little water to make a crack. We'll get that crack to run by lightly tapping the punty rod. Success. Preston Singletary, ladies and gentlemen, our visiting artist here at the Museum of Glass Hot Shop. And folks, I'm going to hand the mic back to my esteemed colleague, Miss Katie Phelps. Once Katie's done with our other guests, Preston will be happy to answer some questions from you, our live audience, at that time. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Greg. So we're lucky enough to get a second performance from Mr. Swilcanum and Jean Tagaban. Would you guys like to tell us a little bit about the piece you're going to perform?
This piece was featured in a movie that Jean and I both starred in called The Business of Fancy Dancing, and they asked us if we could do something in the form of a powwow beat. So we presented this piece. It's called Aboard Andante.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a round of applause.
I know, it's blinding, isn't it? Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you, gentlemen, again for that music. It's really a wonderful addition to our program today. To recap, Preston Singletary, the man to my right, our visiting artist here. We're thrilled to have him. This whole show, our Hot Shop Live, again, we're always doing this broadcast. Today is a very special broadcast. The subject matter being Pacific Northwest Native American art. Preston, we've got a few questions for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your upcoming show?
The show that I'm currently working on for the Museum of Glass is going to be called Raven in the Box of Daylight, and it's going to focus on the whole saga of the Raven, the story that Gene was talking about. And embedded in that story is a lot of symbolism and metaphors that are universal, and that's what I'm going to be exploring with that particular, with this exhibition. And each object will be telling the story of that Raven story as he goes into the clan house and he discovers the boxes that contain the sun and the moon and the stars, and then the eventual releasing of the sun into the sky. And so that's what the exhibition will be like. And it's going to be kind of an experiential thing. It'll be like an installation that you're sort of walking through the story.
And earlier you were talking about how that walking through process will actually mimic the story of going from darkness to light. Can you talk a little bit about how the exhibition will be lit and your idea behind that.
Well, the idea would be to create various objects that represent the aspects of the story. Of course, when you walk in the beginning of time, the world is in darkness, and so you walk into a dimly lit room, and everything will be sort of highlighted with dramatic lighting, and the river that is by the clan house where the daughter goes to drink the water from, and so we have the ladles, we have the river, we have the so it'll be like different objects, and I anticipate working with some new technology of special lighting. I sort of almost like a vaudeville kind of lighting experience is what I'm going to try to do, with some surprises along the way.
So it sounds like you'll be pushing yourself a little bit for this exhibition. How will it differ from your past exhibition here at the museum?
Well, it's dealing more specifically with the Raven story, but within that story, what I'm doing with my own work is getting deeper into the metaphors and the symbolism, because I would like to bring that to light, because one of the elders I was working with up in Yakutat, Alaska, has encouraged me to take his material and share it with people. And so, unfortunately, he passed away in last November, and we had planned on getting together in January. His name is Walter Porter, and he was a very, very amazing man who did a lot of comparative mythologies, much in the way that Joseph Campbell did. So that's kind of what my mission is now, is to kind of honor that relationship that I had with Walter Porter.
That's really wonderful. To switch gears completely, many of you may know, but if you don't know, Preston has an entire other career as a very successful musician. Can you talk a little bit about your collaboration with Swell Canum and Gene Tagaban, the gentleman that were with us earlier?
Yeah, we have a band that we've been together for about 7 years, and we're called Little Big Band, and we are a Native American funk band, because there weren't any before that, and now there is one. So funk soul style music has been sort of the my passion for years, because for me it embodies the best of soul, dance, jazz, rock, even gospel, and dance music. So that and then working with these guys, it brings a whole theatrical approach to it. Gene will come out with his Raven regalia, and he'll dance and he'll do storytelling. Swell Canum also does spoken word and plays the violin. So we're the thing about it is there's a lot of talented people in the group, and we have national members who live out of state. So it's quite a it's kind of like a three-ring circus when we get together and perform. And we're going to be releasing a CD probably late July, our first CD.
Super exciting. I want to open it up to questions from our audience, our live audience, and our online audience as well. And again, just to recap what we've been doing, Preston Singletary, our visiting artist, this is our Hot Shop Live program. We'll be doing another Hot Shop Live in August with Miss Jenny Pullman and Sabrina Knowles. And we'd like to graciously acknowledge the Chance Galleries for their support of this live feed today. The replay? And if you missed the start of this piece, I just want to replay it one more time, the whole piece from start to finish, the abridged version, and then again, Preston Singletary will be answering some questions. So sifting powdered colored glass over the surface of the bubble. Our visiting artist, again, Mr. Preston Singletary, shaping that bubble up. Blowing out the form, the head of the raven, we'll swing it a little bit. And then we transfer that bubble to a new rod called the punty. Once it's been transferred, Preston then cut in the side of the bubble to create the beak of the raven. And we'll fine-tune the shape. Preston uses metal tools as well as those cork paddles to shape the piece. We'll take the sun, heat it up with the torch, and then affix it into the beak of the raven. And then we remove the work and place it into our annealing oven. Again, one of our live instant replays. And folks, I am going to hand the microphone over to Preston Singletary. When we're done with that, I'll speak to you just briefly again. And we thank you, everyone in our live audience, all of you that have been watching us live on the interwebs on our Ustream channel. Again, folks, you can always check in at the Museum of Glass website. Check us out. It's Museum of Glass Hot Shop Live, or you can look directly from our Ustream channel. We have over 145 videos on our YouTube channel. We've got a few documentaries about Mr. Preston Singletary and many of the other artists that come work with us as well. And again, now an opportunity to answer and ask questions with Mr. Preston Singletary. Does anyone have any questions out here in the audience?
The question is, how much do I know, or how much do you blow? Well, you know, the thing is that it really depends on the volume of glass that you have and how hot it is. The hotter it is, the faster it's going to inflate. So it's really just a feeling or a trial and error. You know, I mean, through experience, you understand, you know, how big a scale of piece you want to make. You know, I mean, so given the amount of glass that I have, and I have an idea of like the scale of the piece, so I know that that's the amount that I'm going to take out of the furnace, and then I generally know how much to inflate it. And really the idea with the work that I'm doing with that particular piece is I want to leave the wall thickness fairly substantial, because the thinner it is, the faster it's going to heat up. So when I'm trying to create a sculptural form, I have to balance the you know, the scale and the wall thickness to the heat of the glory hole. If I stick it in there and it's really, really thin, it's just going to collapse. So it's just a delicate balance that you figure out over time. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Let me give you the mic.
Yeah. Okay, the exhibit that we're talking about, Raven in the Box of Daylight, will be April 2017. We'll see you all in 3 years. Okay. Yeah.
Here we go.
Thank you. Well, I guess I think you know one of the biggest honors I had was to make a piece for the National Museum of the American Indian, you know, Smithsonian Institution. So that felt like, you know, okay, I've arrived, you know. They told me they wanted me to make a raven piece again. They said, we've been, designing the exhibit around your piece, and we wanted to commission you to make it. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad you called me after thinking about it for so long. And then they said, yeah, well, it has to be about 3 feet long. And so I was, I said, I think that's impossible. I don't know if I can make a piece of glass that big. So it ended up being about 30 inches. So we almost made 3 feet. Yeah. So anyway, that was the story behind that one.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so the question is, you know, how do I get the sheen or the matte finish? And my work in particular has kind of a matte finish to it because I sandblast everything. So I give it a frost, you know, so it has a uniform matte finish. And the reason that I do that is, I like the look of it, and I think it also draws your eye to the sculptural, you know, form rather than, you know, the light reflecting off it. And so the reason that they don't look the same is this piece has not been finished yet. It hasn't been sandblasted, so it still has its shiny appearance. And then the different colors that I use will create, you know, the effect that you see in my work. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that initially the Smithsonian was asking for a piece bigger than you thought you could make.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the limits of size involved with that.
Well, the bigger the guy, the bigger the glass, I guess, These guys do a really good job in handling a lot of glass, but there was a time when I was blowing glass every day and I was lifting, heavy pieces all the time. I'm not that acclimated to that process, but to me, the idea isn't necessarily how big you can make it. It's, what's the idea behind the piece. Sometimes it really is nice to see a very dramatic, large piece of glass, but at the end of the day, it really is limited to your, we've developed all kinds of ways of supporting, put like a 2x4, get two guys and lift up the pipe and while one guy's turning it. There's all kinds of methods that you can use to make really large glass, but it's pretty wearing on the body. So the scale of pieces, that's about the scale that I'm comfortable at, Beyond that, I usually have to find some big tall guys to help me. Yeah.
Preston, the thing I was amazed by when I first saw your exhibit here the last time was the shadow reflections that come from like the hat pieces
Yeah.
that we received today. Did that come by plan or did that just serendipity happen somehow like
Okay. Well, this here's a true story. This is how it all happened. I was working on these pieces. The hat forms were the first pieces that I actually made because, upside down it's a bowl, but those conical hats were very typical, woven out of cedar bark or spruce root, and worn as sort of a rain hat, Northwest Coast rain hat. So. To me, it looked like a bowl if you turn it upside down. So I started to make these things, and I started to apply the designs onto them through the sandblasting process. And so when I worked as an assistant at the studio of Benjamin Moore, I made the first hat that I ever made, and my aunt had come over to this holiday open house that we would host each, Christmas time in December, early December. And we would so Benjamin Moore had like a beautiful area with lights and pedestals, and his work was over here, and then we had like a card table over in the corner, and my aunt said, well, can we look at the hat on the beautiful lighted pedestal? And I said, sure. So we took Ben's piece down, and I put my hat up, and then there was about 10 people who had followed us, over to see what was going to happen. We put it on the pedestal, and then the shadows came through, and everybody, oh, look at that. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, that's what I meant to happen all along, right? Of course, so that was the kind of like the eureka moment when I realized, so, I have a lot of ideas about, glass and what it brings to indigenous art, native art. I've worked with lots of indigenous artists from around the country, around the world, the Maori, the Hawaiians, Native Americans from around the States. And I think it brings like a fourth dimension to, to the cultural artwork. If you want to call it modern heritage art, you can call it that, because I contend that it's glass wasn't available to anybody really prior to 1950. And the studio glass movement, that's just where we're a product of the studio glass movement, which was artists working with glass in their own way. Prior to that, it was all relegated to industry and designers who were educated but never touched the glass. Then you had the master craftsmen, and you had the designers, and there was all represented through the factory. So, so the Native American culture, I feel this brings another dimension to the native cultures in this new material. And, as we all know, the resources that the totem poles that we carve from the cedar logs are becoming increasingly rare. So you're going to see new materials being used for the cultural arts. It could be concrete or steel. It could be, who knows. But so glass is just one of them. And I hope that the next generation will continue that trend and try new materials and representing the symbols of our culture and our people.
All right, folks.
Uh-oh. Okay, two. Last two, real quick. Go ahead. I what? Sing? Did I? Oh, I'm all shy now. These guys are much better singers than me.
I think that was that special event when you sang.
Oh. Oh, was it the Weyerhaeuser Memorial? That was what it was. Yeah, yeah. And that was a special memorial song for that moment. Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah, it was. It was. Okay, one more question here, and I think we're wrapping it up. Well, it's basically just a hand manipulated. There's a hose with all this aluminum oxide that's going through at a high pressure, about 40, 50 pounds of pressure, and you're basically just wearing the surface down. So it's more of a hand-eye association, and also the fact that I have this layer of powder on the exterior. As you're sandblasting it, then it'll start to lighten up. You can actually start to see the color coming through. So that it's a matter of experience and trial and error, and just kind of a methodical work process. It's very simple, very straightforward, but there are subtleties within the sandblasting process. You've probably seen images carved in 3D, and that's blasted at different stages. So if you're looking through the thickness of the glass, it looks almost three-dimensional. I don't use that much of that technique. It's just sort of positive, negative. But with the stencil process, which I don't know if you saw that, cutting the stencil, everything's covered with a rubber tape. It's then drawn on and then cut out with an X-Acto blade and then sandblasted. So the rubber line actually holds the line very straight. So you're blasting against the rubber tape, and that creates the sharpness, I guess. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. I want to thank my friends for coming down and playing music and storytelling. Jeffrey.